Brandon Miller going second overall was a pick that was met with a lot of criticism. I was critical of the pick, NBA fans were critical of the pick, Hugo the Hornet was critical of the pick, but Brandon Miller is a Charlotte Hornet. He went second overall, nothing can change that. So the focus now shifts to how Brandon Miller fits on this Hornets team and what he could be in his NBA career, which is what I will be focusing on in this video. But quickly before we go any further, if you're new and like basketball and haven't already, I would really appreciate if you would like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to be notified whenever I release a video. I make videos about basketball all the time, and liking and subscribing are the two best ways you can help me out in the YouTube algorithm. Let's try and get 100 likes on this video so YouTube will recommend it to others. Anyways, let's talk about Brandon Miller. So Brandon Miller is a player that fits on any NBA team. He's a 6'9" wing that can space the floor, provide secondary passing and point of attack defense. Any team could use a player like that, and any team can't get enough of players like that, to be honest with you. He's a really good athlete, he's a high field player, and the framework is there for a high level wing in the NBA. It's why he was a top 4 prospect for me in the class. It's why I said the Blazers should take him at pick 3 if they didn't know what the future held. He's a super high floor player with a skill set that's almost guaranteed to find consistent levels of success in the NBA, but he also has a relatively high ceiling. I know he's going to be 21 years old in his rookie season, but 21 is still an age where you have a ton of room to grow and develop. If Steph Curry stopped improving at 21, he would be closer to Spencer Dinwiddie than the top 10 player ever that he has become. And yes, he's a top 10 player ever. If Kawhi Leonard stopped improving at 21 years old, he would be closer to Jaden McDaniels than the all-time great that he has become. No disrespect to Jaden McDaniels, he's a good player with a really bright future, but I think he's closer to what Kawhi was at 21 than prime Kawhi, and probably will be closer to what Kawhi was at that age than what Kawhi has become. I'm not saying that Brandon Miller will be Steph Curry or Kawhi Leonard. I'm not saying he will reach those heights. What I am saying is that at 21 years old, it's not old enough to act like development isn't a huge factor, especially when he improves significantly from high school to college. His high school tape next to his college tape is like watching two different players. And I think his leap in development over that time is enough to be encouraged by the fact that he still probably has room to grow and develop. Now, Brandon Miller will struggle as a finisher and self-creator in the half court. He needs to get stronger, and adding strength to his frame should help. In terms of self-creation, he will have moments where he gets to his spots and hits pull-up jumpers, but he doesn't have the best handle in the world. Now, I'm not saying he has a bad handle by any means. I do think he has a functional handle. I don't think he's incapable of dribbling, but he's a bit stiff as a mover with the basketball in his hands at times. Not saying he's a statue and he doesn't have fluidity, but you notice on tape, he doesn't really have effective counters, which is interesting because he's a very fluid off-ball mover. I do think it will be important to get him on-ball reps early on, even if he struggles with those reps. Game speed reps are extremely valuable for development, and I do think Miller can get to the point where he's a capable self-creator at the NBA level, but early on it's going to be rough. And I would advise Hornets fans to be patient with his development in this area. I don't think he will ever get to Jayson Tatum or Brandon Ingram levels of self-creation, but I do think he can get to complementary level of self-creation, which given his value in other areas of the game should be enough. Out the gate, Miller will provide his most value as a player on offense being an off-ball creator, not just an off-ball scorer, a true off-ball creator. Spot ups, catch and shoot, off-movement shooting, play finishing and cutting as a scorer, and being a connecting playmaker as a passer. Miller has good shot selection and is a good decision maker as a passer, which are two big reasons why he has such a high floor as a player. He has good feel for the game on offense. He doesn't try and force the issue if he doesn't have to. The shot selection could use a bit of work, but it's nothing I'm too worried about at all. I never felt like he had awful shot selection on tape. Now, we saw Jabari Smith Jr., who was a player who thrived off the ball and as a shooter last year struggle. But I do think Miller is a different situation. I think Miller is a much more competent on-ball scorer than Jabari Smith was entering the NBA. I also think he's a better passer than Smith was entering the NBA and probably will be the better passer long term as well. If you want to watch a video about Jabari Smith Jr. and why he was utilized incorrectly in his rookie season and the role he could thrive in as a second-year player, feel free to check out Alex Hoop's video where he goes into full detail about what did and didn't work for Jabari as a rookie. However, the biggest difference for me is that Smith didn't have a playmaker to set him up on offense. He had Kevin Porter Jr. instead. Miller will be playing alongside LaMelo Ball, one of the best playmakers in basketball, a player that is known for manipulating defenses to create easier looks for his teammates consistently, which is something Brandon Miller will benefit from. This will lead to a great shooter getting easier looks off the ball. And it will also help with his on-ball development as well because of the fact that I think the opportunities he'll get playing next to LaMelo when he gets the basketball on the ball will be easier because of LaMelo's gravity as a player. I think Brandon Miller will have a really good rookie season, one of the 5 best rookie seasons in the NBA potentially this upcoming season, and is a preseason pick for an all-rookie first-team spot for me. I think he's a slight tier down from Victor, Scoot, and Chet, but he still will be very good in my opinion. I think his rookie stat projection is 16.7 points per game, 6.8 rebounds per game, 3.4 assists per game on 43.4, 39.7, 87.3 splits. I think he has a chance to break Keegan Murray's rookie record for total 3-pointers in a season. I think he will look a lot better in the NBA than he did in Summer League because even though he did have his struggles in Summer League, I felt like a lot of what happened was due to the roster around him and what they asked him to do, more than it said anything about what I think will make Brandon Miller a really good NBA player. And I also think just playing next to LaMelo Ball will help him out a lot. He will have his highs and lows. He'll have his nights where he can't hit a layup. He'll have his nights where he shoots 20% from the field. But I also think he'll have nights where he lights out from 3. And I wouldn't be shocked if he had a 40-plus point game in his rookie season, or a game where he hits 10 or more threes as a rookie. I don't think he'll lead all rookies in scoring, but it also wouldn't shock me if he did, because of his skill set as a player being very translatable to the NBA, and his fit next to LaMelo. Now, what could Brandon Miller be at his absolute best? I think the best case scenario for Brandon Miller is a borderline All-NBA guy. My peak stat projections for Brandon Miller are 25 points per game, 7.8 rebounds per game, 5.1 assists per game on 46.7, 43.4, 90.1 splits. A guy who could make a few All-NBA teams depending on how good the team he's on is, and one of the best second options in basketball. I think at his absolute best, he would be a guy who could lead a team to the play-in tournament or the 5th or 6th seed as the main option, but his role on a contender is more fit to be a second option. At his best, he could be one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA, he could be one of the best off-ball creators in the NBA, be someone that is capable of getting his own offense when needed in spurts or when the main option's on the bench, but not the focal point of the offense, and I don't think that on-ball offense will be the focal point of his role in the offense, playing next to a star. be a connecting playmaker as well as one of the best point of attack defenders in basketball, I think that's all a real possibility for Brandon Miller. I actually think the best outcome version of Brandon Miller is the perfect co-star to put next to a guy like Trae Young, Luka Doncic, LeBron James, or even a Nikola Jokic. Basically, if you're an elite offensive playmaking hub that can be that on a contender, which I think all four of those players can be, the best possible version of Brandon Miller will be the perfect co-star to put next to that player. Now, this is contingent on Miller becoming a better finisher and self-creator. It's not a guarantee he does get to the level of player I think he can in these areas, but I don't think it's out of the cards that he does either. Now, with all prospects, there are many possible outcomes for their NBA career. I just talked about the best possible version of Brandon Miller in the NBA, which is a borderline All-NBA guy and the perfect co-star to put next to an elite playmaking hub. I think the middle ground outcome for Miller is a borderline all-star. A guy that can get you 20 plus points per game, space the floor, pass well within the flow of the offense, and be a point of attack defender. But he's closer to a third option than a second option. I think it was so to Lewis and what he was in Orlando to an extent with the middle ground outcome, which would still be closer to like the higher end outcome with like what Rashard would be now, but for what Rashard was in his actual career, I think that's realistic to believe that's a middle ground outcome as a 18 to 20 point per game scorer that can space the floor, attack the basket, play defense, and is also like really tall for the position. He can have big games when needed, but it won't be required of him if that's the outcome we see from Miller in the NBA, and the complementary skills are the most valuable. I think the floor for Brandon Miller is really high. I think at worst he is an average starter in the NBA, like a Tobias Harris or a Harrison Barnes. A player that can get you 15 to 20 points per game on a team that's fighting to be 500 or isn't a playoff team at all flat out, but can be your third option in the right situation, but ideally is your number 4 starter on a true contender. I really don't see an outcome where Miller isn't a starting level player at the very least. I think his skill set is too refined and valuable to not be a starting level player in the NBA at the very least. I also think when you combine that with his feel for the game, it strengthens my belief in seeing why it's so hard to see any outcome where he isn't a starter in the NBA. Now, no disrespect to Tobias Harris or Harrison Barnes, because those guys have had very long, productive NBA careers and have reached heights where they are legit players on playoff teams, or even in some cases, legit guys on contenders. But you definitely want your second overall pick to be more than a Tobias Harris or Harrison Barnes. But I also think if that's the floor, you should feel confident in him as a player, because that means his floor is really high, and he also has a pretty high ceiling as well. I still think the Hornets should have taken Scoot Henderson. I just think he's that special of a prospect, but only time will tell with how that turns out. And that doesn't take away from the fact that Miller can be an awesome player in the NBA. I don't think Miller will ever be a Tatum level guy like some believe he can be. I don't think he has a superstar level ceiling. While I do think he can improve on his flaws to reach high-end outcomes in the NBA, I don't think that you can look at what he is now as a player, the flaws he has, and project him to be what Tatum has been in the NBA, which is the best player on a team that could win the NBA title. And even if he can improve in those areas, and I'm confident that he will get better in those areas, the level you have to improve to and the heights you have to reach in your improvement in those areas to reach top 10 players in the NBA or best scorer in the NBA heights is just too much to ask of any prospect. However, I still think regardless of that, he has a legit star upside. He has the skill set and feel to suggest he's going to be an average starter at the worst. At his very best, he could be the perfect second option next to an elite playmaker. Even if I don't think this was the right pick to make for the Hornets, or the best pick to make for the Hornets, I don't think it's the worst pick in the world either. Brandon Miller can be a great player in the NBA, and I hope he does become one. In fact, I hope he proves me and Hugo the Hornet wrong. I would love for him to be even better than I think he can be, because that means more top tier players in the NBA, which is always a good thing. But that's the end of this video. If you made it to this point, thank you so much. Again, haven't already, like, subscribe, hit notification bell, be notified whenever I release a video. I'm making videos about basketball all the time, and liking and subscribing are the two best ways it can help me out in the YouTube algorithm, help more people find my video, so in turn, helps the channel grow so I can make more content for you guys in the future. I'm trying to hit 10k subscribers by the end of the year, so doing those things will be a big help to me and help me reach that goal, and I'd really appreciate it. Also, let's try to get 100 likes on this video so YouTube will recommend it to others. Let me know what you think about Brandon Miller in the comment section below. Do you think he was the right pick? Do you think he was the wrong pick? How good do you think he will be in the NBA? Love to do all of that down in the comment section. But with that being said, have a nice day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.